Hello, hello, hello. This is Talking Manchester United, a United Stand podcast with myself, Paul Gardner, and joining me, as always, is Ash Burns. Ash, how are you, my friend?
I'm not bad, mate. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's the start to a long old summer, but I'm sure we'll get through it. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. The season is finally over.
Yep.
Something we've been looking forward to for several weeks now. But before we go into that, we have with us, once again, from across the pond, Andrew. Andrew. How are you, Andrew?
Gentlemen, I am feeling fine, and I am ready to. I'm not going to finish the statement. You know what? I'm good. And you know what? I feel a lot more optimistic about this than I did about the Manchester United season at almost any point.
Well, that's good to hear. I like that. And also joining us. Go on, sorry.
Oh, I was like, so yeah, good.
Matthew McFadyen, how are you, my friend?
I'm not bad. I'm not bad, actually. Glad the season's over.
Aren't we all? All? Speaking of the season being over, that's what we're here for, gentlemen. We're here to review this No, I can't even keep a straight face when I say that.
I was thinking, where's he going with this? Hang on a minute. Have I signed on to the right one, yeah?
Let's just call it a season. Should we just call it a season?
Yeah,
let's call it a season. Finishing sixth in the league after finishing second last season. What was a 19-point gap is now a 32-point gap to leaders Manchester City. A season that started with one manager, Jose Mourinho, sacked after the Liverpool game in December to be replaced by Ollie as a temporary manager, ending up as permanent manager. A season of 3/3 as opposed to 2 halves. Is it the worst season since Sir Alex Ferguson? I'm going to throw this out to you guys now. Any one of you jump in. Basically, tell me what you thought. Give a 3-word review of this season or whatever you want to say about it, just briefly to start with. And what were your thoughts on it being the worst season since Sir Alex? Because I've seen that thrown around quite a lot recently, that it is the worst season since Sir Alex. But I don't know. What's the thoughts for you guys? Someone jump in.
I'd say it's on par with David Moyes, if I'm honest.
On par with David Moyes? Okay.
The only reason why I wouldn't say it's worse than David Moyes is for that PSG moment. Apart from that, absolutely dreadful.
Anyone else?
I mean,
there's definitely a lot of factors that are going to play into this. I mean, you look at the Moyes/Giggs season. We did finish 7th, not 6th. We did lose 2 more games, so you could argue that it's the worst. But are there other factors that play into this?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it is definitely the worst season since Sir Alex left, for a number of reasons. But the thing is, granted, we finished 6th, but I won't say it's been all bad. Obviously, I mean, we've had some decent moments during the season, and there was a period sort of midway through the season where we saw some great football and we were playing well. But I think what's ruined this season more than the previous ones we've seen is as a club, as a squad, as a team, I don't think we've been in a worse position for a long time. I think when we come off the Moyes appointment, granted the squad wasn't great. Fergie should have made some changes, but maybe it was held back a bit by the Glazers. We don't know, or maybe it was his fault as well. And then that's when we sort of went into that ridiculous amount of spending that we've seen. And I think now, having spent all that money, not really seen a lot for it, and the club in the state that it is, I think coming off that Moyes season, I think we still had a lot of credibility. I think we were still very, very attractive to top players, as we saw, because we signed some fantastic names. But I think now, following this season, I think we're going to see it. We're going to see a big struggle to sign top players. Not that that's our sort of ethos going forward, apparently we've heard. But I think if we want to bring in any sort of top quality, I think we're going to struggle, regardless of whether it's Manchester United, it's a project. I think the only way we're going to see players join this summer is for one reason only, and I think that's going to be money. It's horrible to say, but I think with the club in the state that it's in, with the football that we've been playing, with the morale and the confidence at rock bottom, with the Glazers and Ed Woodward looking pretty clueless, I think it's a dangerous ship to jump on at this point.
All very valid points. Another one you could throw in there as well is that it's been our worst defensive record since Sir Alex left, leaking 54 goals. When you compare that to last season's 28, That's quite a worrying stat when you think about it. What about yourself, Andrew? What are you thinking?
So it's kind of a mixed one for me, because I would say that overall this is probably the worst season since Sir Alex left, but it actually doesn't have as much to do with the football as it does the morale that we see.
Yes.
I think that more than anything, what I saw as things have gone on is it looks like that there is more people that are discontent with playing for Manchester United than have been in previous years. You could make the argument that the football still wasn't as bad as it was under Moyes. But I would say that overall, with how bad the football was at times, with the way that the squad looks, and just the overall feeling around the club and the fans, I don't think that I've seen it since, because being realistic, I didn't really start supporting Manchester United truly until about that time.
Yeah.
And so you literally can't call me a glory chaser. I came in during some of the crap times that we've been a part of. And I have not been a part of a season where I have seen so many people, just not only fans, but players, just look so, I think defeated is the right word.
Absolutely.
I think that's the best word for it. I think everybody feels defeated about what Manchester United are right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the notes that I had written down here was player attitude. I don't think I've ever seen it as bad as what I've seen it this season, in terms of the way the players apply themselves. Not all of them, because you have got 2 or 3 that will still run around like headless chickens, but they just don't have the quality. But yeah, what player attitude is definitely one of the things that I've got down here that is sort of like a evidence that it is the worst season since Sir Alex. And I think the way that we ended the season as well was quite diabolical. No win in our last 5 games. When you consider the opposition that we played, Cardiff, Huddersfield, it's absolutely horrendous. Not since, well, I didn't even bother going back any further, but we haven't done that in any of the seasons since Sir Alex Ferguson, where we finished outside of the top 4 or even in the top 4. Not once have we gone without winning a game in the last 5 games, apart from this season. So that, coupled with the worst defensive record, the attitude of the players, I think that, for me at least, this season has definitely been the worst one since Sir Alex retired. And I think pretty much we're all in agreement, although Matthew, you did say it was sort of on par, didn't you?
Yeah, I'd only say that in terms of like results and stuff, but across the fan base, it's just been such a toxic season. And in terms of that, then yeah, it's way worse than Moyes. But yeah, in terms of footballing alone, I'd say on par.
But it's not been all doom and gloom, boys. Let's try and lift the morale in this podcast just for a moment. We went on an unbeaten run of 11 games under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I've been reading 12, but I've counted 11. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's 11. But an unbeaten run of 11 games where we've seen some absolutely brilliant football. We've seen some top results that we never would have thought we were going to get under Jose Mourinho. A period where we scored 28 goals, averaging 2.5 goals a game. That's almost half of the goals we got that in the whole season, just in that little 11-game spell. I mean, what was the highlight for you guys, during that unbeaten run of 11 games?
I'll start this one.
Go on then.
So honestly, the highlight during that unbeaten run was the very first game. Is we saw Ollie come in, and it looked like the football instantaneously changed.
Yes.
We were playing a completely different style. You could see how high up we were pressing. You could see the way that the attack was looking, and which is really weird as to why things went from looking that good. And I get that it was against Cardiff, but things went from looking that good to how bad they got. To think about how high we were after that 5-1 game. I mean, there was a point where we hit that 5-1, and I was like, it's our best goal tally since Sir Alex left. It was that game where I was like, holy crap, what? This is what actual good football looks like.
Yep.
this is what we can actually have. When did this happen? And like it reminded me that things can turn around, and it just is about bringing the right mentality into the squad. And that's where that game right there is what gives me hope that next season can be better, because we saw what it was like when the team first got together with Ollie being in charge, bringing that bit of positivity, bringing what he brings, maybe an entire off season of being able to institute what he wants. I think things can change around, and I'm actually going to bring a little bit of positivity to that, because I think things can change around. I'm not saying we're going to win the league, but I think things can be a lot better next year than they were last year.
Well, if they got any worse, I'd be seriously worried.
Yeah.
But I guess it all depends on what happens in the summer. And I think someone's actually tweeted us asking about something about next season. I think we can probably cover that in that tweet. But Matthew, I'll come to you next. I mean, the unbeaten run of 11 games under Ollie, we've seen some good football. Any highlights for you during that spell?
Well, yeah, Andrew brings up a good point where he says that the first game of the season, because it was just such a massive change, and it was like, these players can actually play well under the right manager, under the right system. And unfortunately, it just kind of went downhill from not long after that. But yeah, that 5-1 win over Cardiff was just such a breath of fresh air. You know, it started 3 minutes in with that Rashford free kick. We're thinking This is the perfect start. Because I remember watching it on TV, and the camera immediately was put on Ollie. And you could just see the happiness in his face. And as well, not just him, but the whole coaching staff on the bench were absolutely loving it. So I'd probably say that 5-1 win, really. The Bournemouth game as well, I think that was 2 games later. That was another one, particularly that Rashford assist, where he megged, I don't know who it was, but I don't even know if he's okay anymore. Absolutely megged him, and then Pogba got a double, and it was just that little period of a few games where, like, I don't think we could say anything wrong about the team. We're just an absolute dreamland.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Ash, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that seems to be the general consensus. Definitely the Cardiff game, because as Andrew said as well, it just flipped everything on its head and realised that, we weren't just destined to play terrible football under the same, ethos, same manager, and it was good to see the boys, let loose, let free to express themselves and be creative, and it was fantastic. I mean, that was probably the number one. The away to Arsenal in the FA Cup was another big result. I thought was great, especially coming off. I think that was a Spurs win, and then a couple of days later, or a week later, or something, it was the Arsenal away. Those back to back in London, I thought they were both fantastic performances.
Chelsea.
No, I think we had Spurs first in the league, and then we played Arsenal.
You said Arsenal.
Yeah. Yes, it's Spurs. We had Spurs, and then like a week later, we had Arsenal in the cup, didn't we? There was that week. And it was great, and that's especially that Spurs game, because that was our first test under Ollie. Our big test, because he had a fairly favourable run when he first came in, and we saw such a contrasting play style, and I think that for me was one of the first times that I thought, okay, so we know he's a nice guy, we know he can do this, but tactically as well, he has got a bit of a clue of what he's doing. Not that I doubted him, but it was nice to see him switch things up, chuck a different formation, play to our strengths, and we ground out the win really well. I think the Cardiff game, maybe that Spurs game, out of that unbeaten run.
I think as well, you have to include the Chelsea game in there, the FA Cup game after we knocked out Arsenal, because that was within that run as well.
It was after the PSG. That was the only reason. Yeah, that would have been the one, but it was just after the PSG game that I'd have included it otherwise.
Yeah, it was the game after, because everyone was saying how we're going to bounce back from it.
Yeah, that was it.
My mistake then. My mistake.
I agree with you. That Chelsea performance was superb, and we haven't won there in God knows how many years.
Yeah. So that part of the season was probably the only bit really. Okay, fair enough. There was 2 games just after that 11-game run, which you could include in there. Obviously, one of them being that night in Paris, which I'm sure we'll come to shortly. Let's come to it now. Cup competitions: Carabao Cup, FA Cup, and UEFA Champions League. Let's start with the Carabao Cup. A disappointing run. Once again, knocked out by lower opposition. We've seen it against MK Dons. We've seen it against Bristol City. We've seen it against, I want to say Middlesbrough. It wasn't Middlesbrough, was it? No, Bristol City, Derby, and at least now, Derby this season and the third round in penalties. Absolute shocker. FA Cup beat Chelsea and Arsenal, only to go out by Wolves in the quarterfinal. I mean, what are your thoughts on the domestic cup runs, guys? I mean, FA Cup, I suppose that one probably hurts the most for me when you consider the opposition that we beat to who we got knocked out by. How about you guys? I'll come to you first, Andrew, since you jumped in last time.
Okay, me first. I was going to wait till somebody got called out because I know I went first last time. So the EFL Cup, I'm kind of like meh. Like the only reason why I was kind of meh about it is because it's not like it was Mourinho, and on top of that, Mourinho put out basically a pretty strong squad against Derby, and we should have beat them. Like, be real about it. We should have beat them, no matter who we run out there, and we didn't. So I was kind of meh about that one. The FA Cup, I'm not super disappointed. We had a really tough run. It was definitely tougher than City's, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But we had a pretty tough run. Wolves were definitely a good side this year. Wolves were definitely a good side, and I'm not super upset about going out to them. It sucks to go out to a team that is below you in the league tabled, but we all saw how good Wolves were this year against everybody in the top six. They possibly had a better record against the top six than anybody in the top six had against the top six.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Like, I'd actually be interested in seeing what their record is in comparison to everybody else that was in the top six, because they just went in and they basically were handling their business against almost everybody. So FA Cup, I wanted to make it deeper, but at the end of the day, making it to the quarterfinal and getting knocked out after playing Arsenal and Chelsea, still being involved in the Champions League, still being at a pretty decent spot in the league and trying to fight for the league. I wasn't crazy upset about that.
Yeah, that's a fair point to make. I mean, we could have been knocked out a lot earlier in both the FA Cup and the Champions League. So I think, in essence, we had decent runs. Matthew, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the FA Cup was particularly frustrating for us because, apart from Man City, it was there for the taking. We saw, a bunch of the big teams get constantly knocked out. So to lose to Wolverhampton was, really annoying. But from a personal and completely selfish point of view, League Cup pissed me off because I had a bet on the Derby game. I had a bet on 2-1 Derby because I knew Derby were going to knock us out. And I could have won, I think, £370 or something like that. And then Fellaini decides to head in a goal in the very last minute.
And we still went out.
Yeah, we still went out, thanks to Phil Jones. So that was probably the biggest nail in the coffin as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, the FA Cup was just so disappointing.
Ash?
Yeah, reflect both of all of your statements really with the FA Cup. Considering what we did and the performances we put in, and to get knocked out by Wolves, as good as Wolves have been, but it was our own downfall in that game, because that was one of the worst games we saw this season.
Yes, it was.
And it was, it wasn't it was a fantastic end-to-end game. We both fought well, and they just edged it. We didn't show up, and they battered us, which is unfortunate. Yeah, I mean, the EFL Cup's one of those, isn't it? We put out a very strong team, to be fair, and then it was. I think it was a typical Mourinho coming to the end of his tenure sort of performance. He just didn't really care. Threw Fellaini on, and Fellaini almost rescued it for us, and we still went out. So yeah, FA Cup was decent at times, but we should have made more of it. And the EFL Cup was just one of those, I think, where I don't know if we couldn't be bothered, or Derby just wanted it more. It was one of those performances.
Well, let's move on to the Champions League then. A campaign for me, it wasn't smooth. It wasn't plain sailing. We struggled a little bit in the group stage. We probably shouldn't have, but we did. I think if not for that miraculous night in Turin, we would have been in lots of trouble. Two sort of very poor performances against Valencia. That we had a big chance to win that group. We didn't take it. We were quite lucky to go through that group, really. And then fast forward a few games, and then we had that night in Paris. I think when you look at it, we got knocked out in the quarterfinal against Barcelona. The first leg, we probably should have done more because Barcelona were not at the races. They were there for the taking. Yet we still managed to lose 1-0 at home. So that was a huge disappointment because if we had got something from that first leg, the second leg could have been completely different. Yeah. But again, I think that no one expected that we would make it through to the quarterfinal, especially when we realized. When you think back when the draw was, when we seen PSG come out of the hat, no one thought we had a hope in hell. Then obviously Ollie come in, we get some hope, but I don't know what you guys are thinking, but deep down inside of my head, I'm thinking, yeah, probably still not going to get through. I mean, this is PSG, and we're 2-0 down in the first leg, and we're like, yeah, we're out. And then obviously that miraculous night. I'll come to you first this time, then Ash. Champions League campaign thoughts?
The group stage was very back and forth. I thought we were poor across the board, to be honest. In the group stages, we struggled past Young Boys.
Well, we won 3-0 in the first game against them.
I think, in the second game we only scraped a 1-0 win, and we got penned in a lot of that game. I think, if I remember correctly, we were on the cosh quite a lot. I think Valencia, both games were very poor against those. And then, the Juventus game was fantastic, even though we probably didn't deserve the win out in Turin. It was a great night nonetheless. And then, we go into the PSG game. First leg, I think they caught us a little bit by surprise. I think we were in that was that 10-game streak we just come off. Where I think we were going into it, I don't want to say a little bit too confident, but everything was a bit high, and I think we just got exposed, especially our defence. But that second leg was unbelievable. Everything went our way, and it was fantastic. And you're spot on about the Barcelona first leg. I've said that Barcelona have been very, very poor away from home at times this season. What I've seen, I mean, you don't have to look any further than that Liverpool game that they played. They got absolutely hammered, and they were there for the taking. We started that first leg really, really well. There was 2 chances in the first 10 minutes that we should have put away, and as you said, the tie is completely different then. And then after that, I think I don't want to say we rolled over, but it was, again, it was lackluster finishing and lack of composure that cost us, because I thought we started well out in Barcelona again.
We did.
Yeah, a few chances early on. Again, we didn't take, one of the stories of the season. And as soon as Barca got into the swing of things.
At the same time, but I mean, words just don't describe it. Being only 21 myself, I didn't see the 99 final, and I kind of remember the 2008 final, but at the same time, I don't really, because I was only 10 at the time. So for me, apart from those 2 moments, that's probably the best moment I ever had as a Man United fan. So, that's probably the only saving grace of this season. And I mean, that day, it was like the planets just aligned. Everything just went for us, and it was probably one of the most amazing nights in our recent history. But
and it was definitely handball. 100%. Definitely handball.
I don't get why people are saying it's not handball. 100% it was. And
Matthew, have you got something?
I'm a United legend for that.
Have you got something near your mic by any chance? Or is there something scratching against your mic?
No, I don't think so. I can mute myself and go back on, if that's fine.
Sorry?
I can mute myself and then go back on if that.
No, it just sounds like when you were talking, it's like, I don't know, maybe the microphone is rubbing against your face or something. But no, don't about it. It's fine. We can still hear you. It's not a problem. Andrew, Champions League campaign. What are your thoughts?
So, I mean, I'm going to echo everything you guys basically just said, except for saying that, the group stages, I genuinely didn't expect to make it through after, we had some of the results we did. Then we managed to beat Juventus at Turin, and I was like, okay, so maybe we will go through. The best thing about the entire thing definitely was that night in Paris. I mean, I've got a poster on my wall right now from somebody that's on this show. No plug there, definitely none. That is about that night. And honestly, that's going to be a night I'm never going to forget. Like for quite a while, I just. That was one of the most exciting things that's happened in our since Sir Alex left. I think that's the best way to put it. Since Sir Alex left, I was more excited about this than I was about winning the Europa League. That says a lot.
Yeah.
And now we're back in the Europa League, which just kind of sucks. But, you know what? End of the day, we can live off of that moment for a little bit and just kind of be happy with that. But I also, ironically enough, think that that moment is what was the downfall of the rest of our season. Because I think that we got it. Like, I think something got into our heads after that match, and it was like everything just went downhill from there. And I don't know why. I don't know what inside of that match made everything go downhill, but it did.
It's like the players suddenly thought, we've made it.
Yeah. That's actually the best way to put it. It's like, it almost felt like that. It almost felt like they were just like, oh, we made it. We don't have to worry about the rest of the season now.
It certainly felt like that. But let's move forward. Let's move forward, shall we? Sticking with the team, we'll come to the players in a moment. But sticking with the team, in your eyes, for you, I'll come to each of you separately. I'll come to you first, Matthew. For you, what was the best game or best performance of the season?
Do you mean individual performance?
As a team performance.
Okay,
The best match or best performance of the team?
I'd say the best team performance was probably that Chelsea game. Because let's face it, the PSG game, we kind of had a little bit of luck in. But the Chelsea game, we just went there, we got the job done, and we never looked like we were going to drop, or we never looked like we were going to bottle it.
And is that the one, the FA Cup 2-0 victory? Yeah.
Where I think it was Pogba and Herrera scored, and it was a perfect game. But in terms of the best game to watch, like, perhaps for the neutral, Southampton, just because of how many amazing goals there were. I think there was 4 genuine goal of the season contenders. And that Pereira strike, I know we're going to cover goal of the season pretty soon, but that's got to be up there.
So you're gonna pick one?
I'd say Chelsea.
Chelsea?
Yep.
Andrew?
So I'm going to have to cop out and say 2 because I was there for one of them, and it was the Newcastle match at home, and both Matthew and I were there for that one. And to be a part of a classic Manchester United comeback is something that is absolutely amazing inside of a season that was so bad. And then the game that I would say is probably a game that stands out to me the most is Ollie's first match of Charge against Cardiff, that 5-1 win, where I know it's Cardiff, but at the end of the day, that was just a symbolism of what Manchester United could be. So we're not far off from it. I really believe it, but just got to have a change in the mentality of players. And I think that if we get that, we can see that kind of football all season long.
I hope so. So you're going with the 5-1 Cardiff, and what was the score against Newcastle?
3-2.
3-2. Oh yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Ash, go on.
Sorry,
Andrew.
I just wanted to say that was an amazing game to be a part of.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause that was also the one where it was rumored that Mourinho was going to be fired.
Yeah,
after
that's
that
right.
no matter what. And a lot of people think that Gary Neville saved Mourinho's job from that one. So that was an incredible atmosphere to be a part of.
Remind me what Gary Neville said.
Basically saying that the club were being idiots and trying to fire Mourinho when it's the players that are the ones that are causing so many problems. And yeah, that I don't remember everything, but I remember that Gary Neville essentially saved Mourinho's job.
And there we go. Ash, what are you?
I'm probably going to go for the Chelsea game in the FA Cup as well. I mean, if for enjoyability, there's a lot of other games I think that had a lot more excitement and whatnot. But in terms of how impressed I was with performance, I think definitely the Chelsea game, because we hadn't won at Stamford Bridge since 2013 or something. I can't remember, something like that. Every time we'd gone to Stamford Bridge, we'd struggle, or we'd look at, like we were under the cosh. And I thought we went there, we just dominated from minute 1 to minute 90, something that we haven't done in a long time against decent opponents. And it was really refreshing to see it, and especially coming back off a 2-0 loss against PSG, to go into a game of that magnitude in the cup as well, away from home. Heads may have been down after the Champions League game. I thought it was unreal. And and it was nice to see some resilience from the boys as well. Shame they couldn't show that in the later end of the season, but yeah, it was a fantastic performance. Definitely the most impressed I've been.
Excellent. I've gone. Well, no, I am going to go with one. But for me, I asked myself, what 2 games, or what 2, 3, or 4, even well, we're not going to get 4 games that stand out, are we? Let's be honest. For me, it was a case of what games stood out to me. One of them, I think we've all said it, or maybe not Ash. 5-1 v Cardiff.
Yeah,
that one stands out to me, and the 3-1 against PSG. But I'm going to go with the 5-1 v Cardiff because we did see some scintillating football in that match, some brilliant team and individual goals. Now that the goal for me that stands out for most of the season was the goal that Martial finished off. That little move building up to that Martial goal is absolutely fantastic, and I miss seeing that game in, game out, where we played neat little football like that and actually get the ball through. We've been trying to do that so much for the rest of the season. It just hasn't worked. But in that game, we've seen a bit of everything. I know it was against Cardiff, but it was the first game under Ollie. It went from one, I think Andrew touched on this, it went from one extreme to the next. Like, whoa, where did that come from? I think was a similar reaction to what you had, Andrew. Yeah. And so for me, that's what I'm going to go with, the 5-1 v Cardiff. Plenty of goals, some good football, team and individual goals, attacking football. And it was just, it wowed us because of what we had seen previously up to that moment. And it was just a huge change. Such a quick, huge change. And that's why that game for me was probably our best game and stands out the most for me. And then second to that would be the PSG game, just purely because of the feeling that every single one of us would have had when Rashford scored that penalty. Just absolute elation. Yeah. But I'm going to go with the 5-1 versus Cardiff. Now let's bring it down a notch. Worst game. And I'm getting the reverse order this time. I forgot what the order was, so correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm going to come to Ash first. Worst game of the season.
Oh God, how long you got?
As long as you need, brother.
I mean, I think there's 3 that stand out. I will probably pick one, but there's 3 that stand out for me. Number 1 being the FA Cup game to Wolves. That was the first time that we really saw how poor we can be, and how little effort we put into that game. And not to take anything away from Wolves because they play really well, but we were just terrible. And then the 2 last games of the season, the Huddersfield and the Cardiff games. Shocking throughout, to be honest. If I had to pick one, I could have threw Everton in there as well, but I won't. If I had to pick one, probably Huddersfield, I think. I think we touched on this after, when we did the Huddersfield review. But it just, the magnitude of the game, we needed the points to keep the top 4 race alive. Huddersfield have been absolutely shocking all season. Looked like a comfortable enough win, and we just absolutely bottled it and just completely didn't turn up. And I think that was, in the middle of, I don't want to say the fall down, but when we started to underperform, and I think that really tipped the balance, I think, and really was the end of it for a lot of fans when it came to some of the players. And it showed really what the mentality and everything was surrounding the club and just how the club's being run at the moment. So I think probably Huddersfield, I'd say, just not because it was our worst loss, probably go down to Everton, that one, but just for everything surrounding that game and how straightforward it should have been, and it wasn't.
Andrew next, I believe.
So there's 2 that stand out to me, and they were back to back basically. So Everton, the 4-0 loss when
4-1, wasn't it?
It was 4-1. I apologize. 4-1.
I thought it was 4-0.
Wasn't it?
Was it 4-0? Okay, fair enough. My bad.
I thought it was 4-0. I thought that we just got that was ultimately the match where I was like, if we lose this one, we're out of top 4. And if the players can't show up for this, then that says everything I need to know. But then literally the next match against Huddersfield, we had a chance to continue to stay in the top 4 race by a miracle of God. And we didn't take that miracle. And we decided that we wanted to go 1-1 with Huddersfield. And just those games, it being back to back like that, the sheer and utter just disappointment in the team, it just it kind of outweighed anything that I felt. Like I couldn't believe that we would put in such poor performances like that, despite the fact that we had a chance to make it to top 4. So those two are by far the worst, and I'm not going to pick one because both of those are equal to me.
Fair enough. I think when we consider all that you guys have said so far, the worst period of the season definitely came near the end, and I think that was quite clear to see. For me, I've gone with 2 games. I will go with one, but the 2 that for me stood out to be completely horrendous was the 4-0 loss to Everton. Even worse now, I realise it's 4-0, not 4-1.
Yeah.
And also the 2-0 versus Cardiff. And I was thinking about putting the 1-1 of Huddersfield in there, but then I thought, do you know what? The Cardiff one was worse because we were at home and we actually lost the game. And for me, it was the most gutless performance I've seen from a United 11 in recent history. It was that bad, and I felt so angry after the game. I often feel disappointed and frustrated, but I feel angry quite a lot. But that one, I don't know, just hurt a lot. And so that for me is the worst one. The Everton one, we lost 4-0. That was bad as well. But the Cardiff one for me was the absolute worst of the season. It just seemed like the players were just like, do you know what? It's the last game. I can't be bothered. We're not going to get anything from it. You know, the least they could have done was put in a performance for the fans that have paid to go and see them. Do you know what I mean? You look at the end of that game, when the players were on the pitch at the end, half the stadium was empty. Yeah. People just weren't interested to stay and watch them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or to cheer them off. Well, you're not going to cheer them off, are you? But I mean, a few people stayed and had a go at some of the players, which we spoke about last week. But for me, that Cardiff game was the worst of the season. Absolutely.
And Paul, just to echo that, the Cardiff one was pretty bad. But the fact that you and we basically talked for half an hour afterwards just about
we did,
the horrible state that we're in. That says a lot, because at least last year, at the end of last year, finishing second, you could have at least said, okay, maybe something different can happen the following year. Like this, after this season, I wouldn't be surprised to see us finish outside of the top 4 again next year if we don't see a modicum of squad overhaul. And we could talk about that later, because I know we got a question about some squad overhaul stuff. So I'll leave it at that. But unless we see some squad overhaul and we see some people gotten out of the club, and hopefully some of the people that are bringing the cancer to this team, whoever that is, because we don't know who the person is that's bringing the cancer into the locker room, but whoever that is, if they're not gotten rid of, I question whether we'll be able to finish inside of the top 4 next year.
And it could be more than one person as well. Could be 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
Speaking of players, let's move on to players then, and let's start with best or most improved player of the season. And I'll come to you first, Matthew.
Yep. Most improved, I'd go with Lindelof. I think it's pretty much a given, really. His first season was poor, to say the least. That Huddersfield game sort of springs to mind immediately, where for some reason he didn't miss the goal kick. And it was at that point, I think that was October or so. I know you shouldn't really judge players too early, but I looked at that game and I thought, this guy's £30 million, really? Someone who just doesn't seem mentally strong enough to go into challenges. He was just awful in his first season. But in the second season, to be fair, he's got, pretty dire players around him, like Chris Smalling, Phil Jones, etc. But he completely shone. He was probably the most consistent defender in terms of playing, in terms of how many minutes he played and how many games in a row he played, especially towards the second half of the season. I thought he was probably one of the only shining lights from this year as a whole. To be honest, I wouldn't go for what was voted actually as the player of the season, Luke Shaw, because he had an amazing start to the season, but he's just too inconsistent. For me, Luke Shaw's a very average player who has some decent qualities, whereas Lindelof, you could see that he was actually moulding into a really good centre-back. I still kind of have my reservations about him, but I think he's definitely been the most improved.
How about yourself, Ash?
Well, I'd sort of pick two. In terms of best player and most improved player, I think one player could fall under both categories, but I felt like I needed to do two. I think best player, like Matthew said, I think Victor Lindelof. Although Shaw won it, I'm exactly in the same boat as Matthew. I think he's been far too inconsistent. I really, really want him to do well, but he's not covering himself in glory at times. He can be consistent at times for us, but not. You know what I mean? He's not reliable week in, week out. And then most improved, Scott McTominay, which is a controversial one. But considering how much took him, but just for the fact that surrounding everything, the club and stuff, he was one of the only ones that actually looked to really give a shit as the season wore on, and as we sort of plunged into the depths of depression as we have in the last couple of weeks. So I think those two probably as shining lights at the end of the season, and no one really else, to be honest.
Fair enough, Andrew.
All right, so most improved player for me was Victor Lindelof. He showed exactly what Matthew said. He showed the quality that we know that he has in the season. You saw it in the World Cup, and we all wondered if we were going to see that same quality in the World Cup that it come to Manchester United, and it did. He put in some great performances. He proved that he could be a good ball-playing center back, and I think that pairing him with somebody of a better ilk will improve him. And then my best player is actually going to be controversial for some. It was Paul Pogba. Paul Pogba was the best player of the season. The fact that a midfielder managed to lead our team in goals, assists. I mean, the ground coverage is not really that surprising. But goals, assists, ground covered. I mean, there's a lot of stats that he led in. And the fact that he did that, despite the fact that, I mean, he really didn't have a good start to the season. I mean, basically, you'd say the second half, he got most of his stats from the second half of the season.
He did, yep.
And that says everything you need to know about how the team went in general. But Paul Pogba, for me, was our best player of the season. Because, in all honesty, nobody else to me stood out as being that guy. Because it definitely wasn't Luke Shaw, I can tell you that right now. Not that I'm hating on Luke Shaw or anything, because I think that if he can get a better partnership with him on that left-hand side, I think that he can be better. But just Paul Pogba has to win it for me.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, you and I, Andrew, have gone for exactly the same two players. All of us have gone for Lindelof. So I think head and shoulders, Lindelof, I think we should probably say has probably been the best or most improved player for Man United this season. But the only reason I went for Pogba is the same reason as you have, Andrew, and that's because of the stats that he's produced this season. He's not had the best season. He's not been the most consistent, like you said. The first half of the season is pretty poor, and then the later part of the second half, he was also quite under par. So for me, it has to be Lindelof. When you consider consistency, he's definitely the most improved. I mean, like Matthew quite rightly said, last year he was a bit hit and miss. Whereas this year he's shown a lot more consistency and he's improved his game a lot more. So for me, it definitely has to be Victor Lindelof. I was quite surprised when I seen that Luke Shaw got it. I mean, he's not had a rubbish season, but I think there's still a lot more that we can, to come from him. I think it was what you said, Ash, as well. He's got, Matthew. He did seem like a very average player with some good traits. And so many times this season, I've been watching him, just wishing he would do more, think more attacking, try and make some more runs, overlapping, just things like that. And he needs to get that more into his game before he can become a top class fullback. He's got it in him. We know he's got it in him. Ash, me and you have spoken about this several times. Yep. And I keep referring back to that relationship he had with Memphis. Those two are absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. Or Luke Shaw, at least anyway, was absolutely phenomenal when he was on that left-hand side with Memphis. It's like he knew when Memphis was going to make his runs. Memphis always knew when Luke was going to make his runs, and they worked really well together on that left-hand side. It's just a shame that Memphis couldn't reach the heights that we expected of him, because if he did and he was still playing for us now, Luke Shaw could be 10 times the player he is at the moment. That's my belief anyway, at least. But yeah, definitely Lindelof.
Scenes when we sign Memphis in the summer.
Oh, God, I hope not, though. I know, after what I just said, even despite what I just said, I really do hope not. And do you know what ruined it for me? Can any of you guess one thing that Memphis did that's made me think I never want to see him in a Man United shirt again?
Wearing a David Beckham jersey.
No.
Let me give you. I'll give you a hint.
Wasn't the Rolls Royce thing? Was it?
No.
It was the rap. It was the rap.
That's it. Andrew's got it. That's the worst thing I've seen in my life.
It was better than Lukaku's, in fairness.
Was it good enough to be on Eurovision, though? That's the question.
Yes.
At least if we're going to bring in somebody that's going to do that shit, at least it was decent. I mean, Lukaku's was absolutely crap.
I didn't hear Lukaku did anything.
Can bring some talent with it.
Wait, Lukaku did a rap?
Oh yeah, buddy.
You didn't see it.
I'm surprised he managed to find his way into the studio. Jesus Christ.
Need double doors for it.
Brilliant.
Just
Well,
look it up, man. Just look it up.
Yeah, I will. I want to see that.
Yeah.
Or do I? I don't know.
I don't know.
Just do it. We're already screwed as a club anyways. Might as well enjoy it while we can.
Well, I think we've covered most of the points that we, or if not all of them, that
Worst
we wanted
player.
to do. Oh, yeah, of course. Well done, Ash. See, this is why
That's why I wrote stuff down, see?
Yeah, this is why I tell you guys what we're going to talk about. Yeah, worst player. I'll come to you first then, Ash, as soon as you reminded me.
Oh, this is great. I mean, this is just fantastic.
I mean, it can't be no more than one or two.
Two. I've got down two.
That was a joke as well, by the way. It's probably like 5 or 6. You could probably,
I know, but I've narrowed it down to two.
Right.
I mean,
I bet we've all got the same two as well.
I mean, we could have. I mean, number one is Ashley Young. I mean, we may have that, we may not. And my second is Alexis Sanchez. I don't think that's much of a. I don't know. It might be a surprise. You might, just because I think Ashley Young. I've slated him a lot, and rightly so, because the bloke does mad in. Nothing against him personally. Like a lot of fans have, have taken to social media to attack him personally and stuff like that. I'm not about that. It's just I don't like him as a footballer. And what makes everything worse, he's supposed to be our captain.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He's supposed to lead from the front. You can say, he tries to put a shift in and this and that, but most of the time he's blaming someone else or pointing at someone, and he doesn't give a lot of instructions or explain things. And then, secondly, Alexis Sanchez, again, continued. He's just, I don't know what he does. I don't know what he offers, to be honest. Obscene amounts of money for essentially walking his dogs and playing piano. So it's very frustrating. So those I'm not going to go into anymore because I'll rant all night. See, so yeah, Sanchez and Young for me.
Well, I'm gonna go next.
Okay.
Because I've gone for the same two.
Oh yes.
And I said we might all have the same two, so I thought if I go next, at least that's two people in a row.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got Sanchez and Ashley Young. Now with Sanchez, it is frustrating because you think of how much money he's on and the expectation that came with his signing, but he has been hampered with injuries.
Yeah.
Now, I just wonder what might have been had he not suffered these injuries, got a run of games, maybe got 1 or 2 goals, found his feet a bit more. Maybe we might have seen more of the Alexis Sanchez that we hoped to have seen. So I can't help but think that maybe obviously the injuries haven't helped him. But I wonder if he didn't get those injuries, if he would have reached those heights. He may not have. He may have just been a complete waste of money. But anyway.
Do you know, go on.
No, go on.
I said, do you know what makes it even worse is because the player we signed, Alexis Sanchez. We've signed some people who were like Falcao, for instance.
Yeah,
a fantastic player, but he was on the decline. He'd had an injury. He was coming back. It was never really certain what was going to happen with Alexis Sanchez. We sold him. We bought him when he was. Near enough at his peak. He was having a fairly, decent season, albeit he'd been sulking at Arsenal and stuff. He was still unbelievable quality. He'd shown it a couple of weeks before, and he didn't really even have a little bit of a flourish coming in, did he? There
No.
was, normally when you buy a player like that, maybe they'll have 2 or 3 games where they'll bag a couple of goals, they'll put in some really good performances, and you'll be impressed. But there hasn't been one game that really stands out for me that Alexis has gone, maybe go that's his quality, that's his level. Fair play to him. That's a great performance. And that's just the most shocking thing for me, how he's just completely void of any talent or impact on the entire squad. And I think that's the most confusing thing.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. But he was one of my nominations purely because of the expectation. Oh, someone's phone's going.
Sorry, that was my computer.
Yeah, purely because of the expectation, the money he's on. But I do think he was a bit unlucky with the injuries, and I do think that we might have seen something from him had he not got all those injuries. But for me, the absolute worst player who has been consistently shit the whole season is Ashley Young.
Yep.
Without a shadow of a doubt. I don't even need to say anything about that, about that choice, because we all know. Andrew, I'll come to you next.
So I've got 2 players as well. It's Ashley Young and Ashley Young.
I love it.
Legitimately, the fact that he managed to continue to get into the squad, despite the fact of how bad he was, is absolutely pathetic by every manager that was involved. That includes Ollie. I am talking crap about Ollie at this point too.
Yep.
The fact that he continued to get into the squad and we didn't at least give DeLoe an extended run out, give Ethan Laird an extended run out, literally do anything else is absolutely appalling. Alexis Sanchez, Nemanja Matic, I mean, you could Phil Jones, whoever else you wanted to throw into there. I mean, listen, end of the day, yeah, guess what? They all had their problems, but they were all dropped at one point or another. They were. The only player that was never dropped was Ashley Young.
For one game, I think, wasn't it? That was it.
Well, the one game I think he was dropped for it was because he had a red card.
Oh no, yeah, he probably dropped for one game, and then someone got injured.
It was the Everton game he was dropped for, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he came back on at halftime.
That's it. Yeah, I think the Everton game is the only one that he sat out. But yeah, as Matthew said, it was half time. I think he come on then, isn't it?
It's absolutely appalling. He had a crazy low connection on crosses. Like I think he completed 1 cross or something like that in like 99 attempts at the end of the year.
I did see some ridiculous stat like that. Yeah, it's quite horrific.
And just to see that, and yet he continued to get run out there is inexcusable. And I hope that changes next year, because if we continue to see that, Ollie's going to lose some people pretty damn quick. Because to an extent, it's excusable for the early part. You're letting the guy be the captain, letting the guy basically be your guy to start off things. But if you don't replace him after watching film on the season, you might have a fault in your logic.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment there. Matthew, how about yourself?
I'm going to agree with both you and Ash. Ashley Young and Alexis Sanchez. To be honest, we could probably have a whole podcast about how terrible Ashley Young is. he's probably, for me, I think he's the worst right back I've ever seen at United. And to be fair, he's not a right back, but he's still terrible. His crossing for someone who used to be a winger is probably, again, the worst that I've seen. I genuinely don't remember him actually making an assist. I'm not sure if anyone has that stat, if he actually got an assist this season, but there was that one game, I think it was against Fulham, where DeLoe came in and every single one of his crosses was just perfection. And it was such a shame that he didn't get an assist, and it made us think, why are we playing Ashley Young here when we've got someone who's younger? He's a lot more sort of, hungry in terms of first team chances, and he can actually put a ball into the box.
It was the Southampton game as well, wasn't it? He come on.
Yeah, Southampton game, he came on, I think, after like half an hour because of an injury.
And he got,
had to change it around, and he came on as a winger and completely changed the game. Set up that Pereira goal. But Alexis Sanchez, I mean, he got 1 goal at Old Trafford this whole season in the Premier League. That is shocking. Nathaniel Mendes-Lang from Cardiff got more, which I think says it all. And his only goal was in that Newcastle game that Andrew and I went to, which, to be fair, was probably the best day of my life. just because of the fact that it was such a massive comeback. But now Alexis Sanchez, when you compare expectations to how he actually turned out, it's, for me, I think even the swap deal as a whole has to probably be the worst swap deal in history in terms of top flight clubs, because Mickey was dreadful, but no one's talking about him because of how terrible Alexis Sanchez has been.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a case of towards the end of the season, oh yeah, he'll give us some energy and some fight. He was completely void of that as well. He was just a nothing player. We might as well have had one less player in the team, because he was just simply awful for pretty much every single game. And I think he was someone who...
Matthew, real quick. So you asked about Ashley Young's assist. He had 2 assists in the Premier League this year.
Wow.
One of his assists was a little pass to Rashford, which I'm not going to count. Because that's not
you don't get that.
But yeah, on the point about Alexis Sanchez, I think he was a player who we were sort of thinking, you know what, under Ole, we've got this pressing system, we've got this, high intensity football. It's all based on, making runs in forward areas. And we're thinking, Alexis Sanchez could be decent. And to be fair, he scored against Arsenal in one of his first games under Ole, but that was his only decent thing in terms of since Ole came in, and it's just been an absolute disaster from minute one, really.
I think one of the best stats I read about Alexis Sanchez is, I know we always go back to money, but it's quite a big factor in a lot of the discussions. I think he's earned £1.5 million per goal contribution since he's been at United. So that's goals and assists.
I'd say way more than that, surely.
I can't remember how much it was, but and this is the funny one. He's cost us £22,000 per touch since he's been at United.
Wow.
There's a stat for you. It's nearly 23. Yeah, it's nearly 23 grand per touch since he's been at United. That's not bad, is it?
Wow, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a mad stat.
Per touch.
Per touch, yeah.
And how
Bam.
many of those touches actually contributed to something?
Exactly.
They're probably paying about £1 million as it is for him to do anything decent.
It's just ridiculous.
Well, I think that, unless I'm wrong, Ash, but I think that pretty much wraps up everything we wanted to cover
I think it does.
in the podcast. So it's just Twitter now then, I guess, if you want to do your stuff.
Unless you want to be goal of the season. I know we talked about that.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't put that on my list. So
I
yes.
didn't put it on my list either.
Well done, Andrew.
Yeah.
Like,
That's twice I've tried to wrap it up, and then someone's jumped in and said no.
I got you, boo-boo. I got you, boo-boo.
Excellent.
But so goal of the season for me, I had to think about this because there was a few of them, but it's going to be Anthony Martial's against Everton, the one where he bended it around a person and then around Jordan Pickford's hand to hit that bottom right-hand corner. That was a pretty slick goal from a very tight angle.
I liked that one purely because of the little 1-2 we had with Pogba, where Pogba's little flick back to him.
Yeah.
Is that the same goal?
He smashed it. He
against
ran onto it and
Newcastle.
smashed it.
That was Newcastle.
No.
That was to make it 2-2.
Oh. Is that not the same goal then that I'm thinking of?
Didn't he run onto it and absolutely, he bent it right round.
Yeah, the Everton one was different, but
yeah,
the one where Pogba flicked it back, I think that was Newcastle.
Yeah.
They were at the game, so I'm not going to argue.
Back heeled it. It was the Newcastle one.
I'm gonna have to check that later on because I'm convinced that that's wrong. But yeah, I'm probably wrong. Fair enough.
The goal itself was Anthony Martial. A very close second though was the Andres Pereira one, where he basically ran onto it, ran for a bit, and then almost took it like a free kick, just absolutely beautifully.
So you're going with Martial.
Martial against Everton.
How about yourself, Matthew?
I've got a couple. I think Martial against Everton was an amazing one. I think I remember it purely for the fact that there were tweets going about saying, how am I supposed to tell my grandkids that Martial scored from this angle? Or it was something like that went around.
Yeah.
I think it was Mata scored a great free kick against Newcastle. Pereira scored that absolute stunner against Southampton. I think me and Andrew were both watching the game and we were both sort of shouting at Pereira as soon as he took that touch inside, thinking is Luke Shaw overlapping? For once in his life, he's actually making a forward run past him, and he didn't do it. But a special one, it's not a Man United goal, but Vincent Kompany against Leicester, stopping Liverpool winning the league. He'll forever be a Man United legend for that. So cheers, Vincent.
Cheers, big Vince.
Well, I just had a look, and yeah, it was the one against Everton is not the one with the little 1-2 with Pogba. So that was my mistake. But Pogba did assist him for that goal against Everton. So yeah, fair enough. Ash.
Yeah, it's between two for me. I think it's the Pereira goal against Southampton, just because everything, and I love Pereira, so I was so chuffed to see him have an impact and get do something that I know he was capable of. That one or Martial's goal against Fulham. I think where was that Phil Jones's only assist of the season?
Yeah.
Where Phil Jones gave Martial the ball inside our own half, and Martial went past two Fulham defenders and tucked it beautifully into the corner to show what he actually can do. So yeah, I'll probably go with. That's tough, actually. I don't know which one to go with. I'm going to set the fence like Andrew did before and say both. Why not?
Fair enough. I've gone with it's out of either the Martial goal against Newcastle, as it is, as we've discovered now, not against Everton. Although the Everton one was a good one. I do like the 1-2 with Pogba. I mean, the goal took a deflection, I know, but I still thought it was a good one. So it's out of that one. Martial versus Cardiff, purely. I mean, the finish was quite straightforward, but it was the build up to that goal that excited me, which made the goal good for me. Pereira versus Southampton, because that was a hell of a goal, and Pogba against Young Boys. And for me, I'm going to go with Pogba against Young Boys. It was between that one and Pereira, I think. But with Pogba's goal, he had a lot of bodies in front of him. The ball's under his feet. A quick, tight little flick with his right foot onto his left foot and hit it straight away into the top corner. It happened in a split second, and I just thought it was absolutely brilliant when you think of the bodies had in front of him. Pereira was a good goal, but he had time to bring the ball out of his feet, get the angle right, and he had over the top of all the players. And I think Pogba's was more of a difficult goal to pull off. Looked better, I think. So I'm going to go with Pogba against Young Boys.
Nice.
Now, I'm afraid to say that's all the topics because one of you might. It is it? All right, let's take it over to Twitter then, Ash.
Yeah, so as usual, tweet went out asking for your discussion points. Top of the shop then, Michael Stow. This team is bad. Full stop. I like it. Would a non-Europe finish be acceptable if Ole gets the youth involved and makes it his team? I'd take 8th with the right players that show ability and spirit. Not to use a bad word, but that's how Liverpool did it. Thoughts on that? Andrew, you replied to that, so you said he's exactly right in his assessment, so give us your thoughts.
So what he brought up there was the Klopp model, and as much as I hate complimenting Liverpool, they have a pretty good model of how we should do things right now. Klopp in his first season struggled pretty bad, or the first half of his season struggled pretty bad. But as he brought in his team, his philosophy, his everything, wound up starting to look pretty good. And you could argue that maybe his team was better overall than City this year. I know some people will find that controversial, but you could make that argument.
Well, they certainly lost less games.
Yeah. So it's
for that.
at the end of the day, if we bring in the right people, and we next season, if we were to finish lower in the table, but by the end of the season, we were seeing the philosophy that Ollie's bringing in. We're seeing this style that we have. Basically, I would say that not necessarily the scores, but the style that we had against Cardiff, against Bournemouth, or early in Ollie's tenure. If we're seeing that style consistently, that is going to be what matters to me the most, because it'll mean that the philosophy and the try hard of the team will have improved. And that, at the end of the day, is what matters most, is those two things changing at their core.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anything to add on that, Mark? Go on. Oh, go on, Paul, yeah.
I was just going to say, it's okay to say, using Klopp's model or doing it how Liverpool did it. I prefer not to say that, but prefer to say how we used to do it. Because if anything, Liverpool used our old model. Because that's what we used to do. We used to bring through the youth. We used to invest in young players. That was what we were about. So I think it's not a case of doing it how Liverpool doing it, but more a case of doing it how we used to do and should be doing it. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Spot on.
Yeah, Matt, anything to add on that?
No, I pretty much agree with everything there. I think, if we don't finish in a European competition next season, then there'll be more to that in terms of judging how the season goes. Like I forgot the name of the person who asked the question, but referring to how Liverpool did it and how Man United used to do it, it's all about actually laying down the foundations, which I think we've massively struggled with since Fergie. We've seen times where all we've tried to do is get marquee signings and say, right, we'll try and get instant success, and it's just not worked out because we don't have the foundation. A lot of the players that we signed have pretty much been the sort of cherry on top of the cake, as you like. But we need that sponge. We need that, like I said, foundations. That's what we need next season. And, if it means that we finish out of a European place, then so be it. As long as we can actually see some kind of progress and some kind of vision, because we've just lost it.
Yeah, I'd say I agree with the bit of everyone. I don't think we should be finishing at a European competition. Well, something, I think we should be finishing inside at least the top 5 or 6. I mean, considering how poor Chelsea, Arsenal were for a lot of the season, Spurs sort of tailed off at the end as well. I think we should be getting close to them, but I think a lot of fans have this misconception of that sort of privilege of being a United fan, which I don't think we have anymore. We should be finishing inside the top 4. We should be doing this. And it's, we only can if we deserve it. And at the moment, we don't deserve it. So I think, if we get our core sort of philosophy, for want of a better word, that's a dirty word. We don't like the word philosophy.
Or process.
Or process. Yeah, no. But I think we really need to take a reality.
Let's just call it a journey from now on. That's the new word now. It's a journey.
It's a journey. It's a journey. I think we really need to reevaluate. We need to sort of hit the reset button on everything at the moment and get back to our core values and what we want out of this football club. I mean, and that starts at the top. So something really needs to happen at the top, whether that be Woodward's shifting over and getting someone who understands football in to really drive the football side of things forward. So be it. But we need a massive change in terms of style and the way things are run. And if that means finishing outside the top, Europe for a season or maybe even 2, depending on how well we progress and improve as a club and not as a business, I'd be happy enough with that. Moving on then, Statman Doug, where do you see Manchester United finishing next season, and do you think you'll do well in the Europa? I'm assuming, Doug, is he a Liverpool fan?
He is.
Yeah. So where we finish it, so we've kind of touched on it, what we think or what we'd be happy with, but where do you see us finishing next season, and do you think we'll do well in the Europa? Paul, from you first.
Well, I think it's difficult to say where we see Man United finishing next season because Ollie hasn't had a chance to do his business yet over the summer. We don't know who's coming. We don't know who's going. So it's pretty much impossible to say where we're going to finish next season. But if you want to base it on how we finish this season, next season we'll be finishing it, dropping down to League Championship.
Yep.
Because we have been in relegation form. That's true.
Yep.
But so like I said, again, it's difficult to tell. I would expect decent business to be done. Ollie will... Ollie says that he's got final say on signings. He's definitely involved in the process. So I would hope that Ed Woodward would at least listen to him and, support him in what he says. So I would hope that the signings would be of better quality, better value than what we've seen recently. And hopefully that will lift the team, see more effort levels, see a bit more quality in the team. And if we do see that, then we should be finishing higher than 6th next season. Will we do well in the Europa? Again, it depends on what happens in the summer. But I would,
first.
but I would hope that
we don't
do.
have to qualify anymore.
Do we not?
I thought we still have to go through.
No, that was only if Man City lost the cup final.
But wasn't that early qualifiers? Don't we
I
still have
thought
to
that
go
was
through?
if they won.
I thought we have to go through like a one qualifier instead of an extended qualifier. Or am I wrong? Because I thought fifth gets automatic inclusion into the Europa League.
You might be right there,
Sixth-
Ash. Actually, you might be
Sixth
right.
has to go through a one-stage qualification.
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but
I could have sworn that I saw that it was if City won that we didn't have to play a qualifier due to some preseason stuff going on.
if Watford won, if Watford won, we'd have to go into the extended, like the beginning of the qualification process in July.
Oh,
But I
Okay.
think being as they won, Watford aren't in Europe, but we finished sixth because fifth is automatic inclusion into the Europa League, and I might be wrong. I'll have to look it up, but I thought sixth was like we have to go through like a one-off, like play a qualifier. I might be wrong.
okay. Yeah,
Okay.
you very well might be right on that.
I'll look it up.
Well, anyway, in terms of the Europa League, again, where do I think we will do well? It depends on our summer business. I would like to think we would, and I would like to think that we would use the Europa League to give some of the. So I would imagine that 2, maybe 3 players from our academy might get promoted to the first team next season as backup squad players type thing. I think we might see 1 or 2 go out on loan as well. But I would hope that if we do see a couple of them come through, that the Europa League will be used to give them extensive minutes as well as the Carabao Cup as well, or whatever it's going to be called next season, if it's not called the Carabao Cup. But in essence, it all depends on what happens in the summer. We can't... Tell you what, Douglas, ask that again on our 2019-2020 preview.
By the way, ignore me. We are into the group stages. It's Wolves that go into the qualifying, not us.
There we go. Thanks for clearing that one up.
Yeah, I think it's been extended by a place or something after the last couple of years. I'm not sure, but yeah, we are straight into the group stages, so you're fine.
Okay.
Right. Good. Andrew, go on in. Expand on that.
So this is what I'm going to say, because I'm going to go ahead and be optimistic here. I told you I was going to try and do it. Ollie's going to get all the signings that he wants in this summer. He's going to get 5-6 players, and he's going to be able to sell everybody he wants to sell. And then I'm going to say we're going to finish inside of the top 4. I'm not going to say we're going to come first or second, but I'm going to say either third or fourth based on how bad the season ended for everybody outside of Liverpool and City. I'll say that we will finish inside of the top 4, either in third or fourth place, because Ollie's going to get everybody he wants, and he's also going to be able to sell everybody he wants. And then we're also going to get everybody coming back. They're all going to have the right mentality. They're all going to be like, man, we're a bunch of dumbasses, and we need to actually buy into what Ollie's selling. He's actually trying to do something, and we're going to see a lot better football next year.
I hope you're right.
Listen to that positivity, people. We speak it out.
Well, let's go to a naturally optimistic person in the Scottish, Matthew McFadyen.
Optimistic, yeah. Good luck with that.
Are we going to do well next season?
I really don't know. I think our performance in one competition depends on what we do in the other competition. You know, you look at that 2016-2017 season, Mourinho's first year, where when it looked likely that we weren't going to get top 4, he put all his eggs in the Europa League basket. And Ole can maybe look at that and say, actually, that's what I need to do. Maybe come Christmas or January or whatever, when he decides actually we're not quite what we want to be in terms of league position. So I think it all depends on what kind of competitions he kind of prioritizes in the Europa League. Personally, I just play all the French players and a lot of the youth. Because
I thought he said French players there.
I thought he said French players.
maybe.
I was like, so we're playing Pogba, Martial, everybody in the Europa League.
But yeah, I'd play all the sort of, the squad players and some of the youngsters in the Europa League, because that's pretty much their chance to, stake a claim in terms of first team football. That's their opportunity to say, you know what, I want more games. This is what I can do in a European game. And then in the league, obviously, you're going to prioritise that in terms of putting your strongest players out, I think. But yeah, it all depends on, who we sign in the summer. I'm not going to be quite as optimistic as Andrew, but I think it's going to be a slightly better transfer window than what we've seen last year. To be fair, nothing could have been worse than last year. I mean, Lee Grant was one of our signings. That's just
He's the best goalkeeper in the world. Put some respect on his name, Matthew.
I mean, Lee Grant FC. I don't think that's been created yet. That's the spot for you to go into. But yeah, when you look at last transfer window, Fred was the biggest signing. He's done nothing.
Nope.
Delo was probably our best signing. And I just hope it's a complete contrast to what we've seen recently. Ole, saying that he has final say. Apparently what he said was he has a final say and not the final say. That might be a very sort of, nitpicking of me, but to me that suggests that it's not just him that has the last say, it's a collective, and that collective probably involves Ed Woodward as well, which hopefully isn't the case. But if Ole actually is the person who has the final say and says, yeah, I want this player, if it's possible we can get him, then I think it's going to be I'm not going to say a very good summer window, but I think it's going to be improvement. I think players like Daniel James arguably excite me more than constantly being linked to these marquee names, because you're thinking, why would you want to join United?
Yeah.
To be brutally honest, why would they? Because there's tons of clubs who are in better situations out there. Liverpool, for example, Man City, Spurs, they got to Champions League final. Teams in Spain, etc. So if you're a big player, what really is going to drive you towards Man United apart from a massive paycheck? So those sorts of players who are maybe coming from mid-table teams or lower teams, who are going to be hungry and want to play for the team, I think if we sign those sorts of players and they really improve, then I think we can do well in the league. Perhaps get top 4, but at this stage I'd say 6, maybe even 7, just because of how good Wolverhampton are.
Yeah, I probably agree with that, to be honest. Yeah, and I'm spot on about the signings. That's been a big concern of mine. I won't say it as much of a concern, but look, attracting top talent. But I think we need to steer away from that. I think we need to concentrate on bringing younger, hungry players through and building a team, not just a collection of individual sort of. I use the term quite strongly, mercenaries, which seems to be the case at United. Not everyone, but there seems to be a certain sort of group sort of mentality at the moment within United. So I want to steer away from that, get younger, hungrier signings in, and build a team, not just a group of individuals who just can't be asked. So moving on, Ike Iguala, he says there's certain perceptions fans have about the club that need to be killed. One, he is an academy youth product, so he cares much more. And 2, we are the richest club in the world. We can sign anyone. What are yours? So, Andrew, come to you first. Do you agree with those perceptions that are being thrown about? And have you got any of your own?
Damn, those are 2 good ones. Yeah, the academy one's definitely one that needs to go, because at the end of the day, all these players realistically are mercenaries, and unless they show otherwise, then I'm not going to believe that they care more because they came through the academy. And then the money thing is a big one, because just because we have more money than anybody doesn't mean we can sign anybody. And at the end of the day, even though Manchester City, quote unquote, aren't as rich of a club as us, they definitely have as much money as us. And we can almost guarantee that there's some shady stuff that goes on behind the scenes that probably makes players want to join them initially. Now, at this point, I would say they join because the football's good. But I agree with that one. I think that the other one that kind of needs to die a little bit, because I got down to thinking about this a lot, is that all of our academy products can be world-class players. You see so many people, like, I mean, I don't like to talk about this guy's name, especially not on the United Stand, but somebody was mentioning that Stephen Howson was talking about how Ethan Laird can be the best right back in England. And I was like, we've literally never seen this kid like ever, other than in like U20, U18, U23 squad, and couldn't even make it into a match day squad at any point in this season. So, and that was with Ashley Young being as bad as he was. So, I'm not going to for 1 second believe that all of our players can be world-class players. I think that there are a couple players there right now that have that potential, but it's a matter of them living up to that potential and becoming those players So that's another one that I'd like to add on to that one.
Math?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everyone else, particularly in the whole sort of youth thing. I think we're going to be realistic. There's probably about 3 youth players at the moment who have a realistic chance of making it into the first team in terms of being squad players or above. And those are probably Chong, Greenwood, and Jimmy Garner. I'm not going to count Swansea as a youth player because he's been out alone, played professional, etc. And I think one perception that just needs to die is the fact that Jesse Lingard's a young player.
Oh my God,
That's a good one. Yeah.
Just because he acts like a 10-year-old doesn't mean he's a 10-year-old. He's a
Yeah.
27-year-old, and to be honest, that's quite frankly embarrassing.
Yeah, definitely. Paul?
Well, there is one thing that's bugged me for a long time, and I have mentioned it in podcasts previous, and that is, and Andrew's basically just touched on it, and that's the perception that we should be promoting our whole youth team. A slight exaggeration there, but people think that people always refer to the class of '92 where we had like 5 or 6 come through. Around the same sort of period, and it's not always like that. There is going to be a season or two where the current crop of under 23s aren't good enough, and so we might go a couple of seasons without 1 or 2 coming through. That happens. It doesn't mean to say that we're not going to have an academy product in a match day squad. I mean, that could continue for years and years, especially if Rashford stays. But they have to be good enough. And this is one of the things I was thinking when Mourinho was in charge. He didn't really promote many players because in his eyes, they're not ready for it. And I would agree that most of them, like Chong's not ready for it, I don't think. I think he's definitely got the potential. But I don't think he's ready for it yet. I'm not sure about Gomez. Greenwood, from what we've seen of him against, was it Cardiff?
It was Cardiff.
Yeah, he looked lively and up for it. One thing I will say that all 3 of them have got that we've seen is confidence, and they're not afraid to put themselves out there. But I just think that a couple of the players aren't ready yet, and we can't just keep saying we've got to chuck all the youth, promote all the youth, because just because they are youth, it doesn't mean that they're going to turn out to be top class or world class players. If that was the case, everybody would be promoting all of their youth teams every year. It doesn't work like that. So I think that's one thing that needs to be relaxed, is the fact that everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people I think they just say it because it's a tradition, part of the culture of the club. And I think people just don't realize, but they have to be good enough. So that's one thing I was going to say. Basically what Andrew was saying just a moment ago.
Yeah, I agree with all your points. I got probably maybe one to add as well, which may be controversial, may not. Along that, it kind of goes with what I said, but kind of goes against what I said as well in regards to signings. That I think our main sort of direction on signing should be to sign young, hungry players. However, that doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't attempt to sign a decent, experienced, don't want to say old, but a decent, experienced player, because you look at that dressing room, how many players there have really have been there and have done it, have got the experience to lead, and to have been in certain situations, and are used, I don't want to say used to winning, but they know how to get over the line. I mean, you look at Pogba, he's maybe one of the only ones that has consistently won things, but we know his mentality has been questioned at times as well, and his leadership qualities have been questioned. So if the right person was to come up, because a lot has been spoken about Gareth Bale, he looks set to leave Real Madrid. A lot of players, 99% of the fan base, maybe a bit less, is against signing him. I wouldn't, as a proud Welshman myself, even though I'd say I don't think we should sign him. Just because of his injury record and how much he cost us and whatnot. But if a player of that quality, who was maybe in that age bracket, was to come about and would fit our system and everything, I don't see why we shouldn't go for it. I'm not talking, go for 4 or 5 of them, but maybe one, just to get an extra experienced head in the dressing room as well and on the pitch, because one thing we have lacked this season is leadership, massively at times. So I think
a good example is Ibrahimovic.
Yeah.
Because, he was 35 or whatever when he came in, but he did the business when he was fit.
Yeah.
and B, he's a character who was somebody that people would look up to in the dressing room, and you've seen it in video footage. Do you know what I mean? And you know, he would command respect, that sort of character. And now I don't know much about this guy, but he's finishing at Roma this summer. De Rossi.
Daniel De Rossi,
yeah. Now he's a talent, and I don't know much about him, but from what I read, he's quite the. Oh, they said, well, apparently he models his game on Roy Keane, and apparently that's words that come out of his mouth, that Roy Keane was someone he always looked up to. Now, the article wasn't linking us with him, but the article, I think it was on Sport Witness. I do like their website because they just basically, you know, go over the reports and sort of give you an idea of how credible they are. Yeah. So I do like the Sport Witness. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of them. Yeah. But they were saying that, you know, if United were going to go for somebody, if United were going to go for someone that needs, that, you know, if they wanted a leader in the team, that he would be an ideal person to sign just for a year, you know, a year contract. He might not play every game, but if he gave us a season with that mentality, that is what our squad needs at the moment. We don't have any of that. I'm not saying we should go out there and get De Rossi. I mean, he is 35. Yeah. But
he's retired, hasn't he?
I don't think. Well, if he has retired, it must have been in the last couple of days, because all I heard was that he was just. Season. Sorry?
I think this was his last ever season at Roma, or at least as a professional player. I might be wrong.
Yeah, I read that he was finishing at Roma this season, but it didn't say that he was retiring. He might be, I don't know. But all I was going to say, Ash, basically is, yeah, I do agree with you. I don't think we should completely rule out any top talent signings or older signings. But I think right now, if we were going to sign somebody who was older, that something like that would be what you need. Someone who's been there, and done it, has got that animalistic nature about them. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Someone who people will be like, right, you got to listen to him. Yeah. He knows what he's talking about. We don't have that in the squad, and you will only get that from an experienced player. Yeah. Mostly. It's very rare that you would find a 19-year-old. That De Ligt is a exception to the rule, because he has got that, but not many 19-year-olds have that. No. You know, he's a gem, that De Ligt, because most 19-year-old footballers nowadays are, but you know what I mean, they're not like him, put it that way.
They're not. Yeah, I mean, if it was 4 or 5 years ago, I'd have bitten your hand off for De Rossi. I know we're not talking about signing him, but yeah, he is certainly that type of we could do with a mad Italian, really. I think like him, or you know, Gennaro Gattuso. Remember him? He was absolutely mental. That sort of character. We do need someone who's going to grab this squad by the balls and absolutely shake them to within an inch of their life. Because I think at the moment I mean, it could be wrong, but I get this feeling that there's sort of little cliques in the dressing room with, you know, characters leading, and you know, it'd probably be quite difficult to go into that dressing room and try and impose yourself if you haven't got that character about you. So yeah, someone absolutely mental we need to sign. I know it sounds odd, but that's yeah. I get what you mean.
Sound horrible, but basically we need somebody to come in with a prison mentality of, I'm going to come in and the biggest, baddest guy's ass, and everybody's then going to be like, oh shit, we need to pay attention. That's essentially what needs to happen.
Yeah, I'd love Roy Keane in the dressing room, not because I love Roy Keane as a player. I hate him as a pundit. I can't stand him as a pundit. But in terms of everything he represents, I mean, he'd be, even just get him in there for a week, just to batter the shit out of every one of those players in the dressing room. I think it'd be fantastic. But yeah, we need someone mental and who doesn't take any shit at all in that dressing room. But yeah, I get what you mean. Okay, and I think we have. We'll go with one more. Dennis Safori says, do you think Ole is favouring the old Ferguson signings and the English players and the effect it would have on that team as a whole? Do you also think the current coaching staff are good enough to take the team forward, or do we need more quality coaches? Go to Andrew first then.
That's a hell of a question. I think at the moment, yes, he is favouring some of the old English talent. I do think that is the case. But I also think that is something that he's trying to carry on from Sir Alex, just the English talent in general thing. But at the end of the day, I think that Ollie will realize that to be the best team, you just have to put out the best players, no matter who they are. And I think that he will get to that. And I 100% believe that this coaching staff has the ability to take us to that next level. Until they prove otherwise, I believe that they have the ability to do that. Because I've seen what football they can bring, and if they can bring that back, this next season, I got no reason to believe they can't do it. They can't take us to that next level. But yeah, that's my hope, is that Ollie will knock it off with the whole English Boys Club thing and start just playing the best players overall.
Math?
I'm very torn on Ole. I absolutely love him. He was one of my first ever favourite players. And obviously he's a Man United legend, and the start of his tenure as manager, I mean, it couldn't have gone any better. But there's something in the back of my mind that's saying this just might not go well whatsoever. And I think quite a few of us, understandably, will be a little bit too scared to say so, because he's this club legend. In terms of the coaching staff, I'm not too clued up in the coaching on most of the coaches, apart from the assistant managers. For me, Michael Carrick, I'm not sure why he's an assistant manager at the moment. Going from being a player last season, albeit not playing much, but to be the assistant coach, to me, just doesn't seem like someone who's really going to, install this mentality into the players. It doesn't seem like someone who's going to be vocal enough and going to get his ideas across. He seems more like a sort of tutor kind of person. So I do have my kind of reservations there, but I think it's far too early to say, Ole's not the right man. We need to sack him. We need to get someone else. I think, like we mentioned previously, he needs maybe 2 transfer windows. Probably 2 summer transfer windows. Definitely one at least, just to see what his philosophy is, what kind of style he's going to implement, and how quickly he can put that style on a team. So I think it all depends on, this summer, that we actually see what kind of manager he is and if he can actually take us up a notch. So very mixed at the moment, but for me, Ole in.
Paul?
I would agree with Matthew there. I think it is far too early to judge, particularly the coaching staff. This season, for them at least, and with Ollie, it's been mixed. It started very well. The team were playing good football. They seemed to know what they were doing. And then it all just sort of fell apart, and it got to a point where there was games when passes were going mislaid left, right, and centre. We couldn't string 2 or 3 passes together, and it was just like, do they know what they're doing? Have they got any sort of game plan? And everything just sort of went out the window. So it's been a bit mixed this season. So I think we need, give it next season as well. And if it's not improved, then you could argue that the manager and the coaching staff really didn't have a clue what they're doing. But at the moment, I think it's just way too early to tell. He definitely is favouring certain players like Ashley Young, for example. I think really that's the only person in terms of the old Ferguson guys that he's really favouring, because obviously we see Lindelof featured more with Smalling than Jones did. I think Jones only came in when he only came in twice. The other times was when Lindelof was over. Well, I'm pretty sure he was injured. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure Phil Jones didn't feature as much as we think he did. It was predominantly Lindelof and Smalling. Luke Shaw, we didn't have any other left backs. So yeah, I think really it's only Ashley Young that seems to stand out as the player that was continuously picked, despite his poor form and obviously being an old Ferguson signing. But I think that has a lot to do with the fact that he's the team captain. And I just wonder if Ollie has maybe he was just waiting to finish the season, because he did come through halfway through the season. He's going to have a full pre-season now. This is his season coming up. Maybe we'll see a captain change. Maybe we'll see Ashley Young feature far less. That's the hope. If that's not the case, then I think Ollie is either too afraid to strip him of the captaincy for fear of upsetting people in the dressing room, But I hope that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree that I think he's favoured some players, but I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Paul. With Ashley Young obviously being a mainstay in the team, I think it is because he has been the captain. I think it would be a bit of a questionable move if he was to completely drop the captain out of the team and whatnot.
See, I think differently. I think he should have.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe not straight away, but especially when he come onto that really poor run of form. I think he should have had the balls to say, "Look, I'm sorry, but top 4 is on here. We didn't expect this. So I'm going to have to make the change." But he didn't.
And I understand that. I mean, and you and I would have done it, but I think Jose maybe would have had an impact on him. You know, with the whole Pogba thing. You know, he was made captain for a certain amount of time. He was dropped. He was stripped of the captaincy and this and that. And I think maybe Ollie was trying to avoid that sort of drama again, and he said maybe do things properly in the summer, reassess the squad, and just keep it going until then. Could be wrong, but he just seems to be a little bit more well thought out. Whether that's a positive thing, I don't know. In terms of the coaching setup, I agree with Matthew in the terms of Michael Carrick. I love the guy, but there's a lot of that coaching staff that are sort of cut from the same cloth. I mean, you look at Michael Carrick, Kieran McKenna. They're both fairly quiet. They both analyse the game really well. But will they instill that confidence and that drive in you? I'm not so sure. Ole obviously brings his positive mentality, but has he got that ruthless nature? We know everything there is to know about McFadyen and how he's done it. But again, he was always that fallback guy for Sir Alex. And again, not that type of person. I think we need more strength in that setup. I don't know when it'll come. I don't know how or if it'll come, but I do think we need someone with a bit of a ruthless, cutthroat mentality in that staff, just to mix things up, because Ollie's spoken many a times about having a good balance. But for me, I don't see there's enough variety and diversity in that coaching setup. I think there needs to be maybe a bit of a shake-up. I don't know if it'll happen this season. It might take a few years, but someone to get in there to really sort of grab that squad by the scruff of the neck and go, do you know what? They're not going to do it, so I am. So this is how we do things. This is what you're going to do and whatnot. So as good as it could be, I think that there is improvements to be made.
Yep, absolutely. I would agree.
That's it.
So I actually, from a quote retweet, I got a couple of questions, guys.
Go for it.
Keep them going.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So one of them came from Pancash, very loyal United Stand supporter. Gotta love him. He said, how many players do you think we will sign this summer? So don't necessarily have to say exact players, but I mean, how about Paul, you go first. How many players do you think will sign?
4.
4? No? Ash?
5.
5?
Yep.
Then Matthew?
5 as well.
5? I'm going 5 as well. I could see 6, depending on how much money each player costs.
You see, now I was thinking 5, then I thought, this is Ed Woodward.
Yeah.
And I think if we were going to be making 5 or 6 signings, we would at least be hearing about medicals by now.
I mean, you're not wrong.
I mean, if Ollie wants his business done within the next 6 weeks, with 6 players coming in.
I mean, technically the window isn't open yet, but I see where you're going though. I can't see us getting.
Yeah, but you'd be hearing about rumors, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But at the moment, it's just all links, advanced talks, but no one knows.
Interested FC.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, we're close to signing about half of the world's squad. So
we're gonna be stacked.
We're gonna be a massive squad next year. I just want to let you know. But this one, I mean, Paul and Ash, you're not really gonna be able to answer, but Matthew can answer with me. Came from United Potential. It's at Potential United. Is there anyone from your beloved Phoenix Rising you think could make the grade at United, even at the youth level? So first off, United don't really Phoenix Rising don't have a youth level like United do, at least not to that extent. But Matthew, I'll ask you first. Do you think there's anybody from Phoenix Rising that could make it into Manchester United squad?
We were joking about this earlier, and probably the whole squad would get in. Just in case he was over there at the moment. But I'm going to keep it short and sweet, but if I was to pick 3 particular players, it would be Solo Asante, purely because we need a winger, and he's a right winger, only 5'2", and as captain as well. So winger, leadership, that's what we need. Kevin Lambert as well, especially if we're selling Ander Herrera, kind of has that box-to-box, absolute shithouse mentality at times, and he scored the other day. And then a decent centre-back, so AJ Cochran.
So realistically, I think that we could see Solo actually make it. Solo being 5'2" is a huge hindrance on him, but he actually does have some pretty incredible ball handling skills. It's like very good close control. Has a heck of a shot on him. Could put in a really good cross. So I could see him playing at a top level. And then the other guy, realistically, I could see you doing it, would be Kevon Lambert. I think that he has got all the ability and potential in the world to basically go wherever he wants to in the game. He's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got the right mentality. It's just about putting all of his skills together. He's a Jamaican international already, so I could see him making it. And then just because he's a friend of mine, I'll say Adam John could make it as a striker. We could definitely at least use the competition, and he has definitely scored some Robin Van Persie-esque goals for Phoenix Rising this year, and Matthew could agree with me on that.
Oh, he's an absolute legend.
Yes.
Helping us with dissertation, so I'll love him forever.
You know what? That's good enough reason to sign him right there, just because he helped Matthew with the dissertation, and because he's buying a house from me. Let's go. But that's it.
Excellent. Well, guys, I think it's time to bring the curtain down on a roller coaster season where the lows far outweigh the highs, where even an 11-game unbeaten run amounted to absolutely nothing. A season where, despite an 11-point deficit to the top 4 when Ollie took over, we should still have finished comfortably third. A season to forget. Ash, would you like to give out your Twitter details, my friend?
Yep, it's Ashboyo, ASHBOIO. Come back to me for the final thought on this season after you give your details.
And you can follow myself as well at Paul Gardner MU. Don't forget to follow the podcast account at United Stand Pod. And also we're on YouTube as well. Search Talking Manchester United Podcast. And also whilst you're on YouTube, go follow, Andrew can promote his channel in just a moment, but also go follow VanCam, subscribe to VanCam. Absolute brilliant channel. Obviously hosted by the awesome Kev Ashford. Andrew, would you like to give out your details?
Sure. Thank you, Paul. So at Redbearded Red on Twitter, come follow me over there. I'm not as active as I want to be right now on there, but anybody that follows me, you know why. So go follow me at Redbearded Red. And then same goes for my YouTube channel. There's a reason why I'm not doing a lot of content right now, but it's the Redbearded Red on YouTube. We put out a lot of content: Manchester United, Phoenix Rising, NFL, Arizona Cardinals, whatever you want. I could probably tickle your fancy with it. So, yeah.
There we go. A man of many talents. And Matthew?
Sure. Twitter is @_Matthew, so _MAFFO. And we've talked about That Night in Paris loads of times, and you can get yourself a print all about That Night in Paris at offsidegraphics.com, as well as tons of other posters. I think there's about 130 up at the moment, so if you haven't checked there, then have a look.
Excellent. Be sure to check that out. Well, guys, thank you all for joining me for this last podcast of the 2018-19 season. For anyone who's still listening, 2 hours into the podcast almost. Unlike last season, we will not be taking a summer break from the podcast. I'm sure you'll all be glad to hear. The podcasts won't be as frequent. They probably won't be weekly. They will just be more reactionary to news and to transfers. So you might get one weekly, might be every 2 weeks, might be every 3 weeks. Depends on how on what happens over the summer. So stay tuned. Keep checking your podcast apps. Keep checking YouTube and keep checking Twitter, because we will be back shortly. thank you all. Yeah, thank you all for listening to us this year, and we hope to see you again going forward.